My name is Kristen Powers. I use she, her pronouns. I am the creator of a documentary called Twitch. I'm also a North Carolinian. And I'm here talking a little bit today about 10 years of lessons learned after my personal genetic testing for Huntington's disease. So I'm going in my time machine back to 2012, which was a decade ago, and talking more about who I was then. So I was in high school. I was somebody who had a loved one with Huntington's disease, my mom. I'm pictured here with my little brother, even though he's taller than me. My little brother and my mom a few months before she passed away. In 2011, which is when my mom passed away in January 27, I thought about the process of making a documentary. So I had known I was at risk for Huntington's disease since I was about 11 years old. Never questioned wanting to test. I knew from the moment I found out that I wanted to test, and couldn't really wait till I was 18. I really wanted to know. My brother, not so much. My brother's kind of the opposite. So we had both of those experiences in our family. But one of the reasons I wanted to make a documentary was I was a very visual learner, and I felt like I was reading all these scientific materials that were kind of, no offense to scientists, cerebral and a little hard to relate to, and I wanted to know what's the emotional impact of testing? What does it look like? Like, I know I go to the doctor's office, but like, what does it really look like? And even though I wouldn't know that ahead of time from my genetic testing experience, my brother could know, my other younger brother could know, and all y'all could know as well. So I received my results on June 1st, 2012, the second to last day of high school. I graduated from high school a week later. Okay, so I did want to share a clip of my film with y'all. And the reason I want to show this is, again, to continue to demystify the process. But I think as we talked about a moment ago, I also want to give y'all space. If the watching a genetic testing result process is too heavy right now, feel free to step out. I am not offended if you get up, if you need to take a moment. But the reason I want to show it again is because of that emotional and visual process, and it really is who defines a lot of who I am 10 years later. And if you do want to watch the full film and see more of the experience, you can watch it for free on YouTube at the Huntington's Disease Youth Organization YouTube page. So I am going to go ahead and play this, and again, please feel free to step out if you need a moment. It's about 5 minutes long.
Over to UNC Hospital to get the results of Kristen's HT test that occurred 2 weeks ago. At the moment, just a regular day at this point.
Yeah, not for me so much. It's not a normal day. I feel really apprehensive, and I have all week.
If the result is positive, then the clock starts ticking. For the first time, really hoping that she has a real negative test score.
Well, I'm nervous. I'm nervous for her. If she tests positive, obviously it'll be very rough. Kristen has gone through a lot, and I think that's one reason she's able to handle it very well. For example, when her mom died, she didn't tell anybody for a while, and she was keeping that in, and she acted normal, and I think she's able to keep that appearance and maybe bottle in feelings. I think she's going through a lot, but she's also able to keep her composure really well.
Well, it's good to see you guys again. I didn't get a chance to meet you last time. I'm Debbie.
Dang.
Nice to meet you. This is Dr. Powell. Well, I have good news for you today. You tested negative.
Oh my God.
So.
Oh my God.
Sorry, little pug's coming in.
That's okay. That's okay.
Wow.
Oh my god.
It's the same tears the day you were born.
Oh.
Kind of like a rebirth.
High five.
And as we talked about last time, your results do not determine your brother's
Right.
results, and I know that's going to be hard for him to hear. Genetics doesn't have a memory. It flips a coin every time.
Okay. I don't have Huntington's disease, Nate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is Debbie.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. I might see you in the future.
Hi, Grammy. It's Kristen. I have good news. I do not have Huntington's disease.
Hey there, it's me. Good news.
Oh, okay.
She tested negative.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Kathleen, good news. You were right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know what to do now either.
I just want to remember what this all feels like and not forget. That was weird to think about that, you know, I'm gonna be okay. I am okay. I am okay. Like, the word, I just feel like I need to, like, print the word good news all over the place because that's the only word I can remember from yesterday. Good news.
Okay, even I need a minute. I've seen that documentary hundreds of times, and I think it's even just right now kind of hitting me a little bit different. So it's also wild for me. I know obviously I'm pretty young, and I've only been through 2 decades and a half of life, a little more, almost 3. So this is a huge portion of my life that has passed by. And, you know, I'm here now in North Carolina still. If you couldn't see the text at the end, it was saying that I ended up going to Stanford. I studied in college out in California for 4 years, where I was part of the Huntington's Outreach Project for Education at Stanford, or HOPES, which some of you may have used those resources. If you ever watched the HD in the media section, I wrote a significant portion of that website. So came back home. I have 2 younger brothers. So Nate, who is featured here, is 2.5 years younger than me, but I also have a brother, Joshua, who at the time of filming was 7. So we kept him out of it. And now I'm going to his high school graduation on Friday. So time has flown by. I currently work at a nonprofit that supports and works alongside formerly incarcerated women. And as I've said, I'm celebrating 10 years since my results day on June 1st. Yeah, thank you. So, and still, while my mom has passed away over 10 years ago now, and, I received these results 10 years ago, Huntington's never really leaves a family, and both of my brothers are still at risk. Neither have decided that testing is right for them at this time. A big reason for that for my brother Nate was that, unfortunately, 5 years after my mom died, my dad died. He died of brain cancer, and for a long time I was really mad that I lost 2 parents to different brain diseases. This presentation was pretty emotional, as you can tell, trying to figure out what to do and what to share today, because he has been gone for 5 years now, but he was a caregiver for someone with Huntington's even when we didn't know it. He supported her even after they divorced. They divorced before we knew she had Huntington's, and he was always incredibly supportive and always very nervous about me and my brother having Huntington's disease. So today's talk, I wanted to go a little bit more. Give me one. I wanted to go a little bit more over what I've learned in the past 10 years. But when I was making this presentation, I also realized a lot of it's just what I learned going through Huntington's disease. And so as we're all crying, we might as well talk about grief. One of the things I've learned over and over again is that we're all members of this grief club, whether we wanted to or not. We are all in this membership together. And one of the ways that I process grief is through different forms of humor and creative outlets. So these are cartoons from Marie Andrew, who's a great cartoonist. She has a lot of stuff on Instagram, and I'll read this out loud for folks who can't see, but she made these little cartoons that a grief membership card where she talks about the privileges, being invincible from other setbacks. That one I'm like, I may not agree with that one, but you get to make morbid jokes. You have immediate intimacy with other club members. You have relationships on your terms, and you have creative material for life, as she is demonstrating. The transformative power of grief: before loss, you have a calendar. After loss, you have a melancholy reminder of difficult days that lie ahead. $3 card becomes everything. An innocuous question like, what does your dad do, becomes well, nothing now. A song can be the most painful sound in the world. And we continue to grieve. I am a Marvel fan, so this is from WandaVision. And Vision is saying here to Wanda that what is grief if not love persevering? I process a lot of grief from works of art, from creative outlets, from pop culture. And I think that has helped me a lot with the different forms of grief I've experienced. And I also think in the busy day-to-day life, we don't let ourselves grieve as much as we should. And we try to keep it down, but I think it's really important to find outlets to grieve. So we keep going, and we grieve some more. And this is Andrew Garfield talking about a recent film he made. He recently lost his mom. And he said, we just never get enough time with each other, right? I hope this grief stays with me because it's all the unexpressed love I didn't get to tell her. And then speaking of that club membership too, finding grief amongst others has been really helpful for me. So, I had lost both my parents at the age of 22, and I didn't know anyone else that young that had lost both their parents. I only had one other friend who'd lost a parent. So it was really hard to find people to connect to that I knew. So there's this group called the Dinner Party for 20 and 30-something-year-olds that has been incredibly helpful, even just reading the resources online. But then also, they're back at it now, but they actually do dinner parties, and you can host a dinner party or you can meet up with people, and so that's been incredibly helpful. Let me get my notes back up. So the other lesson I learned was to expect, or actually before I go into that, the other thing I want to say with grief is grief doesn't have to just be losing somebody. I think we can grieve in lots of ways and grieve lots of things. We can grieve the future we didn't get to have. We can grieve changes in our everyday life. We can grieve losing someone as they change or as we change. So I think there's also lots of forms of grief, and that we should be able to process all those forms. The other huge thing I learned just months after my own genetic testing, and the genetic counselors told me, and everyone told me, expect a personal identity change no matter your results. And I think we are all like, okay, yeah, like if that makes sense if you test positive. But it happened when I tested negative. The image I'm showing is just a sketch that I did as part of a class. I took a Think Like a Designer class at Stanford that our final assignment was design the next 5 years of your life, which is a funny experiment. But I did the assignment, didn't think anything of it. And then when I was going to present, I realized that it was the first time in my life I'd made one plan. I wasn't making a plan that was with HD and without HD. And I shared that in my presentation because that to me was just so much less brain power. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do genetic testing, was because I knew that I wanted that one path to focus on. I was having a hard time going back and forth, and so that was huge. And then I also was quote unquote normal. I didn't know how to describe that other than I went from being at risk to someone who doesn't have this disease and never had this disease, but I just grew up thinking I had it. And so I kind of was no longer in this community of people who are at risk. Like even when I showed my film in Chapel Hill, I had someone come up to me and they're like, hey, I'm happy to be here. Where's your brother? Because I want to talk to someone at risk. Like they didn't want to talk to me anymore. And so I was like, okay, well, he's over there. I don't know how much he wants to talk. He's kind of shy. But I think that was kind of like something I had to adjust to. And then also survivor's guilt. I mean, even with my family, I had to explain over, especially my grandma, who took care of my mom for years, she kept saying, well, I just feel bad because like now your brothers definitely have it. And again, she even watched the film where they say it flips a coin every time, but like trying to explain I'm not, like the results are not dependent on mine. But I had a lot of family members who didn't understand that. So trying to explain that over and over kind of was hard. Even my younger brother, who's now thinking about testing, the youngest one, saw him a few weeks ago and he was like, well, I'm worried because you tested negative. And I was like, again, it doesn't affect it. But so there's been just a lot of dynamics that changed as someone who tested negative. But the other part is to build community. And Ruth is wearing the same shirt she's wearing in this picture here. Thank you. So I first came to this HD community here in North Carolina. I moved here when I was in middle school. And I was going to all these conferences in Massachusetts with much older people, and I didn't really have this community. And I walked into a Chapel Hill support group meeting, sat down next to Ruth and Kathleen, and Dr. Mary Edmondson was the speaker, and I told them I'm thinking about making a documentary, and you can tell Ruth's commitment has been unwavering, wearing the shirt like from day one, building community, connecting me to the people that made it possible to make my film. And I could not fit all the people who have been a part of my community. I have a screenshot of my mom's childhood best friend talking about how she's watching out for us, of people I've toured with. I got to meet, as part of this journey, anyone are High School Musical fans, Taylor from High School Musical, Monique Coleman, became a huge fan of the film, and so she was always trying to support the film that way. But you don't have to make a film to have community. You don't even have to have physical community. I think we're really lucky here in North Carolina to have as much community as we do, but that's also where the internet can be really a blessing, and connecting with people from all over the world. That's where like Huntington's Disease Youth Organization helped me a lot, because I didn't know other people my age going through these experiences. And so even just online talking to them and asking them what their experience was like has been really helpful. And y'all are doing this today, but get the support and resources you need. Again, especially if you're caregiving, like this is something I think can be a challenge, but this is a picture from the European Huntington's Disease Network Group, and it's a bunch of young people who've been affected by Huntington's, and we're trying to support one another, connecting people to resources, and that doesn't even look like scientific help or medical help. It even looks like finding a friend who can help you with your everyday task or can take over for a few hours and you can go see the newest Marvel movie. Like you can get out for a little bit. I know for my grandma, she was raising my littlest brother while my mom was sick, and so she went to a grandmother's support group. And so she just found community in a lot of ways, and I think that ties into the last point as well. Also check in on the kids. I think this sounds obvious. This is a picture of me and my brother when we were little. But I think often, I gave a speech a few years ago about how kids are unrecognized caregivers in themselves. And so I was also the oldest, and I was the oldest girl. And so my dad reminded me some of the stuff I did I didn't have to do, but I was trying to be mom. Especially to my brother, who was unruly, in my opinion. And so, but checking in on the kids, like I knew something was wrong with my mom. I didn't know my biological grandfather, and we didn't know him, and so HD was a huge surprise. So we didn't know what was wrong with my mom for a long time or what was happening. And so she, to me as an 7, 8-year-old, I was picking up on things, but not knowing the words for what I was seeing, but I knew something was wrong. And so I was trying to step in a lot. So the other thing, this actually wasn't related to HD, but I was put in therapy when I was 7 when my parents divorced, before my mom was really symptomatic. And obviously I stayed in it up until this day. I've had my same therapist for 14 years. And so I think making sure kids have those resources. And I just, when my therapist, when I was 7 or 8, we just played Connect 4. We didn't talk about anything, but my dad knew I was going to a place where if I needed to talk to someone, that I could. And then also capture memories. So this is a picture of me and my dad. But I think one of the blessings of losing one parent was it made me highly aware of what I didn't know about my other parent. And so, soon after my mom died, I had ordered this book that was things to ask your parents. And he was a very shy and introverted guy and did not talk much, so that was really hard to get information out of him, but I did it. But I think capturing memories is also much easier than it was 10 years ago. But one thing I realized with my mom was she was always the one behind the camera. So when I was even trying to make the documentary, most of the stuff she was behind, all the pictures and all the videos. So I wish we had focused more on turning the camera around and getting more images of her. So I was always very conscientious of that with my family members. But it doesn't have to look like just photos. I will say audio, or again, making memories together that you can hold on to. That has been incredibly important to me. And I'm the person in the family who's always asking the questions and trying to get my grandparents and aunts and uncles to tell me everything that they know. So definitely be your family historian if you can. This is my brother. I'll explain context in a second.
Gonna get my milkshake. Gotta wait in line first. Got that big thirst that only a milkshake can solve. My milkshake. Milkshake. I wanna get him in a milkshake.
So that's my brother Nate, again. You can tell we were very close growing up. I know I made people cry right now, but I hope you laughed as well. Because one of the things with Huntington's disease, I feel like we sometimes give it too much power to rob our joy. And so I always am trying to create moments of joy. And my brother made us that very easy. We were in line for cookout, and we had a song on in the background. And he just spontaneously made up the milkshake song, which is now infamous, more than Keely's song. So in our family, my littlest brother sings it ad nauseum, and it's been 7 years since he created this makeshift rap song. But so creating joy is really important, and I think that's going, connecting, all of it's connecting to making memories and that community, but finding ways to laugh and to have these really important memories. Even with my mom when she was symptomatic, my grandma was always really good at poking fun at her in a lighthearted way and getting her to laugh. When she was in a nursing home for a long time, we had one of the staff members was also very lighthearted and joking, and so we found lots of ways to have joy. And my youngest brother was a baby when my mom got sick, and so we always brought this little, one of the things I always think nursing homes should always have like a preschool next to them, because the amount of joy that a little toddler running through a nursing home brought, especially for my mom, was really important. But even things, milkshakes are clearly a through line of my life, because even with my mom, like we would get McDonald's milkshakes together, and that was a thing that continued into late into her disease process. So finding moments to create joy is, I think, incredibly important. And then finally, again, y'all are here, so kind of taking this advice already, but to connect with the people who've been through that. If that's me, this is my cell phone number and my email. And this is also, a lot of this is focused for the families today, but even for providers or genetic counselors or medical students, this is also something I think that's really important. I meant to acknowledge at the beginning that my story is just one of many. My story is different than my brother's. It's different from, even because my aunts and uncles had a different father than my mom, no one else in my family has Huntington's. So like my grandparents that I grew up knowing, my aunts and uncles don't have it. So it's really just my one family line, and I know that's very different from other families who have sometimes multiple people with HD at once. So, I can speak to what I've been through, but I also acknowledge there's many other lived experiences here. And I think it's really important for everyone to connect with people who've been through it, and for the medical providers also is listening to the people who've been through it. I talk to a lot of genetic counseling students, and they're always like, what advice would you give to us? And I was like, well, you should ask your patients what they want. One of the good things about my genetic counseling experience is it went the way I hoped it would. We actually didn't talk about how the results would go, but looking back, I was like, it would have been nice to have a space for the genetic counselor to say, like, what do you want your results day to look like? Do you want me to know ahead of time? Do you want me to pull out an envelope together? Do you want me to rip off the Band-Aid? Do you want me to ease you into it? Most people want to rip off the Band-Aid, but like some people want to be eased into it, and I think just having that space to, especially if you're not from an HD family, to acknowledge that you don't have that lived experience is important, and to connect with those who do, so that you can do the best job you can as a supporter of someone with Huntington's. I think that is my last slide. So I also wanted to give space. I know I was throwing a lot of information at y'all, but I just wanted, I have the mic, so I'll have to repeat questions, but I just want to know, how does this resonate? What things would you add? What questions do you have? And like I said, I have one disease experience, one genetic testing experience, but I have talked to many people worldwide. One of the benefits of Twitch was that it has been shown in 6 continents, so it's been really cool to talk to people who are in South Africa. What does their HD experience look like? Chile, Australia, China. HD is a global disease, and I think there's a lot of ways it resonates and manifests, but that is another big thing. And then one thing, the slide, I kept making last minute changes. The other thing I want to add too is that I've noticed across my experience is that we also have to do a lot of fighting for accessibility and disability rights. I will say, like, spaces like this are great, like one level, the bathroom's really accessible, the hallways are accessible, lots of parking. And so one thing I've come away with from my experience with Huntington's is I'm a huge disability rights advocate now, a mental health rights advocate. I work with a lot of formerly incarcerated people who have interacted with mental health and incarceration, and it actually reminds me a lot about how my mom was pulled over by the police a lot, and community members called the police on her without building that community first. And so one of the other points I wanted to make before I finish is that we have to continue to advocate for accessibility and disability rights and be in community with other folks as well. And that's one of the reasons I was a big advocate for the HD Parity Act, and still am for many years, because I think that's something that I've learned in the last 10 years from my experience, and both from my experience with my mom, but also my dad's brain cancer experience as well. So I try to give presentations to communities outside the HD world as well, because like I said, if you're not of the lived experience, it's hard to know what to consider. So I think the more we talk about that, the more we destigmatize Huntington's, the more we destigmatize mental health and the more help that people can get when we can openly talk about it. So I will stop there, and I'm happy to take questions, happy to hear other people's experiences as best we can with the setup. And we have Ruth over here.
Just remind everybody that in order to find Twitch online, just search on Twitch, comma, YouTube, comma,
Yes.
HDYO, or Huntington's Disease Youth Organization, something like that, and it'll come up.
Yeah, so to find the documentary, it's on YouTube. You can search for HDYO, Huntington's Disease Youth Organization. There also will be a screening, a 10th anniversary screening of the film on June 1st at 6:30 p.m. in Burlington, North Carolina, about an hour from here. It's free and open to the public. I'm happy, I forgot to put that on my slideshow, but this June 1st is 6:30. At the Paramount Theater in Burlington, but it's also online. Anyone can watch it, and it's about 43 minutes, so not too long. And you're welcome to share it with whoever you think needs to, again, get proximate. You can share it with your doctor, you can share it with family or friends, anyone that you think it might help them better understand the HD experience. Any questions or additional thoughts? How to find the film? Yes, so if you go to YouTube and you type in Twitch, if you need to know how to spell Twitch, Ruth is your poster board for today. So Twitch documentary, Twitch, Kristen Powers, that's the spelling of my name and my email. And you can also text her or call me or email me if you can't find it, but it should be pretty accessible. And you can always go to type in YouTube, Huntington's Disease Youth Organization or HDYO, and Twitch, and hopefully it will come up pretty quickly.
Kristen, we'll put a link on our website.
And a link will be put on the website. Yes, question in the back.
So earlier you mentioned different types of grief. It's not just losing somebody, it could be lose a job, you lose part of your identity, all of those sorts of things. You also mentioned the differences in the way that people treated you after your news, after you tested negative. Did you find that you were maybe conflicted and potentially grieving the loss of that part of your identity, even though it was very positive news? I imagine that might be something.
Yeah, so the question is about kind of like grieving, different types of grief and grieving, I mean, my loss of identity. I mean, it was definitely a big change. And like, I had one experience with someone from the HD community shared with me a link, and she was like, please share this with other people who have HD or who are at risk, but you can't join the group. She didn't do it the most tactful way, but I like understood what she was getting at. But I think that was weird. I mean, I had grown up essentially always identifying as having Huntington's. Like I just assumed I had it. I kind of operated like I had it or was going to have it, and I didn't know that. I think the whole time. Like I think it wasn't clear to me till after I tested that I just went through life thinking about it. And my family was also like always very curious. Like if I hadn't grown up at risk, would I have done a lot of different things? Because I lived on a very accelerated, like fast-paced. My dad made the joke about he hopes I actually fail a test because I was a little over ambitious with school and like trying to get to all the places I wanted to go. Because with my mom's experience, she was shocked and surprised by it, so she didn't really have that heads up where I was like, okay, if I test at 18, she was symptomatic in her early 30s. So like at least I'll have another, like at 18, I was like, another decade, so long, I haven't even lived a decade. So I was like, that'll be a ton of time to do stuff I want to do. So that to me was like, I think informed by my mom's experience as well. Like I was like, she didn't have a lot of time, she got surprised, and so I'm gonna try to cram everything early on. So it's definitely also affected how I've lived my life. Question in the back. Yeah. Anything I would have done differently? I think it went the way I wanted. Some of the things I don't even know if I would want it. Like so for example, my brother, I found out months afterwards that he had really suffered in school during this time period because he was so nervous. But in some ways, I'm glad I didn't know that. And I think like the hard thing with Huntington's, it is a family disease. Like my dad did not want me to test. And in some ways, I just had to make that decision for myself because otherwise I would have been paralyzed by all that information and all the different wishes. But I did compromise on some things. Like my best friend Daniel, who was in the film, he was sitting next to me. He originally I just wanted it to be me and him, but my dad was like, I am not paying for anything related to testing if I am not in the room. So I was like, okay. And then my adoptive mom was like, I too am not going to support you in college or anything. If you're like, there was a lot of ultimatums going on. So I was like, okay, I just don't want to look at you like during it. So that's what they were sitting in the back. But I think it went the way I would have hoped for. And I think like probably just talking to my brother more about it. It was always kind of hard to talk to because he's a little closed off and his experience with my mom and Huntington's is very different than mine. Like he doesn't remember most of our childhood, which is a little frustrating to me because I'm like, remember when? And I was like, you're the only one left. Like it's just you and me from that time period. And he's just, I think, baby boy, younger brother is like, I don't remember anything unless it was sports or school. And so but he was really affected by it. And I think I didn't know that as much afterwards. And even he wanted to test right before he went to college. And by the end of the summer, he didn't test, and he was really mad at us, and I didn't know why. And he was like, well, you didn't make any of the appointments for me. And I was like, that is not something I can do. But I wish we had talked about that like months ago because like that would, like if you were feeling confused about that, like we could have talked through it. And so I think there's just some surprises there that I had where didn't realize all these things. So, but I don't think anything different. And it sounds like we got time. But I'll be around so I can answer questions later. So thank you. Yeah.